Hey guys, it's your girl Ashley Kirkwood with the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast, where we teach you how to start at the top of the speaking market instead of working your way up from the bottom. During this show, you will hear solo episodes from me, where I'll show you how I have landed and negotiated 5- and 6-figure speaking contracts and licensing deals. You'll also hear from our amazing guests who have grown enormous speaking businesses by utilizing sales and marketing principles that work. If you want to grow your speaking business, listen to this podcast, and then afterwards, head on over to ashleynicolekirkwood.shop and grab my book, Speak Your Way to Cash, How to Start at the Top of the Speaking Market Instead of Working Your Way Up from the Bottom. Ready to dive in? Let's go. Hey, it's your girl, Ashley Kirkwood. Today, we are doing a rerun episode of one of our favorite Speak Your Way to Cash podcast interviews. I know you're going to get crazy value out of this. So go ahead, listen in, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Let's get into this interview. Hey guys, it's Ashley Kirkwood with Speak Your Way to Cash. And today we have such an awesome guest with us, Kamanzi Constable. Am I saying that right?
You got it spot on.
Okay, excellent. And he is an entrepreneur extraordinaire. He has an amazing entrepreneurship origin story, which we'll get into a little bit. But really, I reached out to him because I heard an interview he did where he talked about how he dominates getting corporate contracts. And I know for a lot of you, or a lot of us speakers, we focus on the one-time speaking engagement with colleges or with corporations. But I think to have some longevity to your business, getting longer-term corporate contracts and consulting contracts is really, really valuable. So if you have a pen and paper, get it ready, because he always drops value and you all are going to get a lot out of this interview. And I'm so happy to have you. So Kamanzi, welcome to the Speak Your Way to Cash community.
I love the theme of this podcast, and I have heard a few episodes, and I see the quality guests you come on, and I'm ready to and excited to give your audience a little something.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, we are really, really excited to have you here. And one of the things that really was impressive when I was listening to your story and doing some research on you is that you started as an entrepreneur having your own bread company. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a vacation relief service for independent bread operators. That's like a mouthful.
Wow.
But basically, it was all the guys you see in your grocery store that you don't even think about, the guys that deliver like Brownberry or Little Debbie or Hostess or Schneider's, like all those guys, you see them deliver in the grocery stores, they work for themselves.
Wow.
So when they want to go on vacation, they need somebody to cover their route. Now, they just won't have, the company doesn't provide anybody because they're not employees, and they can't turn this over to just anybody because they invested $250,000 into the franchise. So as you can imagine, they need a lot of trust. And so I came in there, I showed up every day, I did good work, I built that trust, and it was very quickly that I built a $500,000 business there.
Okay, so that sounds like such a unique niche. How did you find out that that was an area that was needed to start serving that community?
I had delivered bread for Sara Lee. So
Okay.
I had bumped shoulders with these guys every single day. And one day, the guy that was delivering the Brownberry, he wasn't wearing a uniform. So I just wanted to know, like, why do these guys have not wear a uniform? We have to. And he said, I'm an independent owner. And I'm like, what's that? And that kind of started me down the rabbit hole of, well, since he works for himself, he told me he hadn't gone on vacation in 8 years.
Whoa.
Like literally 8 years. He tried out a bunch of people. And think about this. These guys could be like in Aruba on vacation, like enjoying Aruba. And then the person that they hired doesn't show up. What does that person do?
Right.
They have to get that bread delivered no matter what. So it was a very high trust business. So since I was already in that industry and had done bread and they'd seen me showing up every day, I asked one guy, I'm like, just give me a shot. Give me a shot. I'll do good for you. And he gave me a shot. And once I did good for him, the floodgates were open.
This is such a phenomenal story. I don't even know if the Speak Your Way to Cash family understands how unique this is, because I have literally never even thought about bread owners, like individual. And you do go to the bread aisle and you see so many brands. So a part of me is like, who are these people behind these brands? But this is phenomenal. And you built a $500,000. And how old were you? Because that was also very, very, very interesting.
I was 19. And at 19, I built beyond myself like very quickly. And I started to bring on like my brother and then my cousin. And before I knew it, I had 6 employees and we were doing routes in Wisconsin, Illinois, and in Indiana.
Amazing. Amazing. So that is phenomenal. So they were essentially solopreneurs. So if anyone didn't, it was all on them. A lot of them didn't have full-time employees that could have their backs on this.
Exactly. It would be the same in our space. It would be the equivalent of if you taught a weekly class, let's say you had a bunch of students and you couldn't show up for whatever reason, and you got a guest speaker to come in there and speak for you.
Right.
Now, if this is your business, your students, you're going to be very cautious about who you bring in, right?
Absolutely.
So it's essentially the same deal, except these guys had a lot of money invested and they had no fallback plan.
That is genius. So eventually you start this business, it's doing well, you scale to several employees. You end up having more than 6 employees, right?
Yeah, at the height, I think I had 9 employees was the most I ever had.
Okay, but then eventually you started hating it because you were married with kids at this time?
I was married, I had kids, but more than anything, I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. So a lot of money was coming in. I didn't understand quarterlies. I didn't understand creating a corporation for this. I didn't understand that at the end of the year, Uncle Sam was going to be like, where's my cut? I want it. And so nobody in my life was an entrepreneur, so I didn't understand how to structure this and manage it. If I could go back now, and people that are listening to this still is a viable business. I sold this business to a friend of mine, and 15 years later, he's still doing it, folks. Like, think about not only the bread, but chips, Little Debbie, Pepperidge Farm. There's all these brands that you see on your shelf that you assume that the store did it. That's not done by the store. It's done by separate vendors, and they're all independent. So I had a dream to build like this empire where we had guys in every state that were running these routes, and I was just managing it. But back then, because I mismanaged the money and didn't understand how to structure this business, it meant I always had to wake up and get on the truck, and that's what made me hate it.
Yeah, because you were working, tell us, because you said the hours were really intense, so you were working wee hour of the mornings.
Yeah, it was sometimes midnight, anywhere from midnight to 3 a.m. till around like 11 or 1 in the afternoon. So it was at the crack of dawn, way before the crack of dawn. And it just was not a great lifestyle for me because I'd wake up at this time. I had kids. So if you guys have kids, you know you're going to bed at a whatever hour, let's say 9, 10, you're waking up at midnight. And then my body thinks, oh, we're up, let's eat. And what's open at midnight or 1 a.m.? It's like all junk. Yeah. It's like McDonald's or the gas station. So I'm like, I would wake up every day. I had a morning routine of waking up, chugging a 44 ounce of Mountain Dew, going to McDonald's, getting some cheeseburgers, and then starting the route. And it was just a horrible life.
Yeah, no, that sounds really tough. So eventually this business doesn't work out. You fall into bankruptcy. Is that right?
I had to file bankruptcy because we incurred about $170,000 in tax debt among other debts.
Okay. And how do you go from losing this business, being very, very young, but very successful in this business, ended up having to file for bankruptcy, into corporate consulting? How was that transition?
It sounds interesting when you hear it this way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So in 2011, while I was delivering bread, had discovered podcast. And I discovered a podcast that most of us have heard, Smart Passive Income. Mm-hmm. And this guy, podcasting was new. I had an iPhone. Podcasting was new for me. And he's talking about making money on a laptop. And at first, I'm like, this guy's crazy. I'm like, passive income, laptop. I'm like, what is he talking about? But then every morning I had an abundance of time where I'm delivering to grocery stores. So I just kept listening. I found him. I found Dan Miller. I found Michael Hyatt. I found, back then it was Jason Van Orn. I can't remember what their podcast was called, but some of the original people in internet marketing. And so I got intrigued and I wanted to know more. And more than anything, I wanted to make money with my mind and not my body.
Yeah.
As I opted into Pat Flynn's email list, I got this little PDF called eBooks the Smart Way. And I had always loved to write growing up, but I never thought you can get paid for it. So as I was going through everything that I was going through in my life, like my marriage was falling apart, all this debt, this business was just terrible, I started journaling those thoughts. And after about a couple months, I realized there's actually like quite a bit of material here. When it was transferred, because I was writing this by hand, and when it was transferred to paper, it was about 35,000 words. And so with eBooks the smart way, I thought, why can't I take this, make it into an ebook, sell this thing, and try to make some money? So that's exactly what I did. I followed Pat's template in there. I put the ebook out there and I put it online. And of course, most authors know where this is going. I didn't sell any copies.
Yeah.
So I didn't have an audience. I didn't have an email list. I didn't even have a website at that point. I just thought this magical Amazon thing was going to sell me some books.
I think I heard you say in a previous interview that you looked up and your mom hadn't even bought the book.
No, because it was friends of mine that had wanted to support me. They bought it.
Right.
And then there was a whole gaggle of people in the grocery stores and that I interact with in this business. They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy the book. When it comes out, I'm going to buy like 7 copies. And none of those people, like when it came time to put their money where their mouth is, isn't that the case? Right?
Yeah.
People are talking, then you got to put up some cash and they're like, nope, I'm not doing it. And then my mom, who I thought would want to support her son, she just didn't get it. She's like, an ebook, like that's a book that's on the computer. Like, what is that? Like, and she's African. So she's from Mombasa and she's a little old school. And she's like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
I'm not doing that.
No, I was crushed. I'm like, I put all this time, this effort, my heart into this book. I was so proud of it. I'm walking around like I'm an author and I was just crushed.
Yeah, that's tough. It actually, when I wrote my first book, The Law School Hustle, like all about my journey from almost failing out of undergrad to getting almost straight A's in law school from Northwestern Law, I didn't realize how much work goes into selling a copy of a book. Like it is a lot of work, which is why I teach the speakers that I work with, just sell them in bulk. I mean, honestly, like it's fine to do the advertising and the Facebook ads and everything else, but it's so much, for me, it was so much easier to just sell them in bulk, have bulk orders ready to go and write the book with the sales plan in mind from the beginning, because it's just not as easy as you think. And books are not that expensive. So.
No, they're not that. But isn't it funny how somebody will invest $12.99 for Netflix? They'll get the cable package that has whatever. They'll do all of these things,
so
like a $4.99 ebook that could help you become a better you, or like a $500 course. Like that becomes then a stretch.
It does, but yeah, and it's so weird because books, actually reading books and taking courses has been the number one best investment I've ever made.
Absolutely. And so here I am, I put these books out there, they don't sell. And that's when I really started getting into this, figuring out that I needed to build an audience. I needed to build people that were interested, not just me shouting in the wind. Yeah. I was posting on Twitter like 100 times thinking that I was following about 200 people and one person was following me. And I thought that every time I post, everybody would see it, even the people that I was following. I didn't realize it was only the people that I was following me that would see it. So I'm posting away to this one person and they message me and they're like, dude, like, I'm going to unfollow you. This is ridiculous. Like, what are you doing?
You're one follower.
My one dedicated follower. And
that so is pretty funny.
I spent the first part of 2012 building an audience. And the way that I went to build an audience was I leveraged other people's audiences. So I knew that I didn't have an audience. I knew that organic social media probably wasn't going to take me where I needed to go. I needed to go where my audience was and get their attention. The quickest way to do that was through guest posting. I'm a writer first and foremost. So I saw the opportunity to write for other people's blogs, and then they would give me some links back to my website. And in 2012, I sent out 120 guest post pitches. Out of those 120, I landed about half of them, about 60 posts that were published. Now, they were published on some good blogs like Jeff Goins and Michael Hyatt and John Acuff, some big people in my industry back then. And those hits, when I guest posted for them, would bring me like my first 5,000 email subscribers in the first half of that year. And then once I had that list, then I was able to go to that list and say, hey, if you enjoyed this post, you enjoyed my content, I also have a book. Then I started selling some copies of the book.
Oh, I love that. And I love that the numbers of that, because I always tell you in the beginning, for a lot of us, for a lot of speakers, it really is a numbers game, because no one knows you yet. They'll love you once they know you, but they just don't know you yet. So that's good that you did that. So 120 guest post pitches resulted in 60 posts that were published, and that resulted in 5,000 email subscribers.
Yes, ma'am.
That's phenomenal.
And once I figured that this actually would work, I just turned it on overdrive. So in addition to the guest post, I also added podcasting because I knew I had a story to share. I sent out 90, I think it was like 96 podcast pitches, and I ended up on 80 podcasts in 2012.
Wow.
I was on a lot of shows that year, and this was all cold pitching. Then I started throwing the mix of what you do, Ashley. Mm-hmm. I started looking at local speaking opportunities, and these weren't paid. This was just a chance for me to get out there, get my name out there, get some more content, some more video, and get in front of local business owners. So I started looking at meetups. I started looking at Chamber of Commerce's. I started looking at Rotary Clubs, Kiwanis. I started looking at word camps, which are the events for WordPress. I started looking anywhere locally that I could get my name out there. And I sent out 54 speaking pitches, and I ended up landing 27. And out of those 27, 13 were actually paid. And when I say paid, it was anywhere from 150 to, let's say, I think the most was like $500.
And so you said meetups, Chamber of Commerce, word camps. What was the other one that you mentioned? I don't think I've heard of that one before.
Kiwanis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's great, because I do recommend the Chamber of Commerce and Rotary as well, right? You said that?
Yep. Rotary International.
Those are also great places, because a lot of those people are from a variety of places, and they could also bring you into their organizations. But for typically when you do the free engagements or you send out those pitches, they're not paid. So even when you got the $150 to $500, that's pretty good for speaking at organizations that you would have spoken at for free. But how did you get that rate? Did they just say, oh, by the way, we'll throw you this money for travel?
No, these weren't from the actual paid ones in the mix. There were from industry association conferences.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And those do pay. Yep. Yeah. And were you just cold pitching industry associations as well?
I was. Because back then I knew that social media was a hot topic, and I knew that a lot of organizations did not do social media well. So I would find and I was in Milwaukee at the time, which was close to Chicago, big market.
Yep.
So I would pitch Chicago industry associations. I went to chambers of executives, their association, and a lot of healthcare stuff too, kind of niching down that way. And I would just drive from Milwaukee to Wisconsin. It's about an hour and 20-minute drive. I drive down to Chicago, do an event, get paid, come back.
Now, when you were doing these, so these are kind of like one-off engagements, were these converting into, or were you also selling them consulting packages long-term in the back of the room, or how were you making this more sustainable?
No, because I didn't know any of that back then.
Okay.
No,
okay.
Back then, all I knew was, okay, I can get paid to come in here and speak. Now, if I were to do it now, I would do it much differently, because it's easier to get somebody to spend money with you that's already spent money with you than it is to acquire a new client. So I would have gone back in with several offers. I would have sold from the room. I would have offered a series of trainings. I would have offered them some course materials. Now, if I go speak, most of what I speak now, if I do speak, not corporate consulting, but speaking, it's multi-level marketing events, multi-level marketing, network marketing. And it's not me joining their thing. It's me just simply going to their events. And I'm normally speaking about content marketing in large publications. So I just did one that was in Dallas, went there, spoke on large publications. They allowed me to sell my course from the stage. So they paid me $10,000 to come down there to speak. And then I sold a $1,000 course from the stage and ended up selling $33,000 worth there. So that's how I would do it now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know people at home they're listening to these numbers and they're like, okay, but how can I do this as well? So for someone who's interested in getting larger fees and really selling more than just speaking. Like of course they want to get, everyone who's listens to this podcast pretty much wants to get paid to speak, but to have a sustainable business, having like longer term contracts and not just selling one engagement, but always having something more to offer, I think is really, really important, because it is a grind and it's a lot of travel when you are doing 35, 40, 50 engagements a year. So how do you get started getting those larger contracts and doing things like that?
Yes. And Ashley and I definitely don't want to give you the internet marketer little spin on this to make it sound like I just did this 3-step system and all of a sudden, $100,000 gig, buy my course. No. What I want the listeners to understand first is we're talking about things that happened over the last 8 years. Mm-hmm. I started in 2011. We're talking now in 2019, and there was a lot that happened to build up to this point. So
and your credibility in the media as well built.
Exactly. And so that's one key that I would tell you, and Ashley just hit on this. If you want to get the higher fees, the person that you're pitching has to understand why you deserve those higher fees. They have to understand your value. They have to understand how your value is different than somebody else pitching. If I was pitching a conference and another speaker was pitching the conference, and I am a contributor to places like Entrepreneur and Business Insider and Fox and stuff like that, that's what I'm bringing to the table. And I have also consulted for companies like Unilever and Morgan Stanley and some big companies. I list that as social proof, and the other speaker is listing off that they've done this or that. What is going to look more impressive to the organizer?
Yep.
It's the credibility and it's the social proof. That's the game changer in charging those higher fees. There's a lot of things that you can do. You can get interviewed on podcast. I was interviewed on Smart Passive Income, one of the larger podcasts in our space. I got that interview by cold pitching Pat. Wow. I cold pitched an angle that he's published a lot of content. I knew that one thing he has not published is content about large publications. I found an angle that's not hit on this podcast. Ashley has all kinds of things she's talked about on this podcast. If you found an angle that if I was pitching her, let's say I'd pitch her on corporate consulting, she's not covered that. That'd be an angle that would interest her. So you can find a lot of shows through things like Radio Guest List is somewhere. I just saw one that's like podcastguest.com, the Haro, Help a Reporter Out, all of these sites that list off opportunities that are specifically looking for guests. You can get your first few that way. You can find some shows that you feel like would be a really good fit and find the unique angle. Don't make this about, I am so great and who I am. And like, nobody cares. What are you going to add to the audience?
Yep.
You can get on some podcast. You can get on publications. So like a publication like Entrepreneur, Business Insider, Inc., most people assume I got to know somebody there or I got to be some big shot in my industry. Yeah. Guess what? One good pitch gets you in. That's it. And I'm not joking here, folks. Mm-hmm. One good pitch gets you accepted. Real quickly, if you want to get into a large publication, it's as simple as going to the publication, looking at what they consistently publish. You don't know what that is? Go to their top posts, their top 50 posts. That's going to tell you all the things that are popular on their site. So when you're pitching, that's the things that you're going to pitch is what already works. You find the contributions editor. They've done the work for you. They're listed on the site. Their email address is 9 times out of 10. It's already on the site because as media organizations, they cannot miss out on a story. So they're very accessible. Now that means there's a lot of people pitching, but if you do the work of looking at what they publish and then in your pitch, don't send them a full article because they don't know you and don't know your style. Send them some ideas. Say, here are 3 things I could write about that would work for your audience. Those 3 ideas, topic ideas, I call them pitch ideas, should be based off of what they're already publishing. They're not going to be the first person. They're not going to be about you, your life, your story. They don't care about that. They're going to be topic based. Send that in. Give them a little bit of social proof, who you are. Send some writing samples like to your blog and LinkedIn and Medium, some places you can get on. And one good pitch gets you in. There's people that are listening to this that could get published on these large sites this week if they wanted to put in the work. That's how quickly you can do it.
Yep. And I think that the work part of it is what I always tell people, just don't punk out, do the work. Like, don't punk out. You can do it. Do not punk out. If you're listening to this, you're like, I would love to be published in Inc. or I'd love to be published in Forbes or wherever else. Just start pitching. I've told this story before, but I probably pitched the local Chicago network that I appear on now 16 times and I've been on 6 times. But the first 5 times I pitched, I just didn't even get a response. I just kept pitching. And if you for television, if you watch the show, it's going to be easier for you to pitch on brand material. So just keep pitching. It doesn't matter if they don't respond. Pitch again, keep pitching, especially if it's good. Don't pitch the same thing. Switch it up. Yeah. Switch it up, but definitely keep going. So that is great advice. That's really, really great advice.
Cool.
So
I would tell you that you have to build up your credibility, and then also you're looking up to talk about how to get the higher fees. You're looking up better opportunities. Most people are going for the low-hanging fruit. So they might be going for some smaller local stuff. And there's some really good industry associations. I don't want to knock that. Mm-hmm. There are some that have money and will pay you well. Like one is like the Chamber of Corporate or Executives or something like that. It's the CLC. These executives, they bring in speakers to speak on all kinds of topics, personal development, digital marketing, whatever, and they pay well. Like we have several people that we have mentored that are doing exclusively these types of chambers for executive specific, and they're getting fees anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000, but then they're also getting the back end corporate consulting stuff because these are executives at a company.
Yep.
So those can be good. And then multi-level marketing, network marketing. I'm not always a fan of some of their practices, but there are some that make good money.
Yeah.
That do incredibly well, and they pay speakers incredibly well.
So this is awesome. And I think for speakers, they've already gotten so many tips and information that they can apply. For people who are interested in getting into corporations, because we've kind of talked about the association events, the different chambers of commerce and things of that nature. But if you're trying to pitch, say, McDonald's, or I know that, I've listened to you, so I already know this. Everyone, other people may not know this, but I know that you recommend starting with privately held companies and maybe looking at the Inc. 5000 list to get your start with those pitches. But for a lot of people, finding the companies really isn't the problem because there's so much information on Google now about how to find the company. But the problem is, what do you say to a company when you've maybe never consulted with the company, but you do have a corporate background?
Yeah, what you're going to leverage is whatever you have. So at the end of the day, you would not go to a Nike first.
Right, right.
Because a big company like that is going to want to see that, you have done consulting, but then it's an entire process. You have to become a registered vendor. You have to do the background check and screening. You have to have all of your insurances and your business structure in place. And for most people, that's going to DQ them. And then you have to submit a proposal. That proposal has to be approved by the board of directors. And like that process could take anywhere from like 6 months to a year. And then once you get in there, then it's like a lot of those companies like a lot of on-site stuff. And you could be on site for like 6 months and it could end up feeling like you have a job. So most people are not going to start there. You are going to start with local companies, with privately held companies that have an individual owner or like a ownership group, because those companies don't have the red tape that a corporation would go for. And I would suggest that you start hyper-local. Wherever it is that you live, there are companies that need what it is that you do. There are companies that you when we say local, you're thinking of like your flower shop or your whatever. Like you have small, dinky company in your mind, and that's not the case. There are a lot of bigger, like when I started doing this and I was looking at local, I looked at like a lot of local grocery chains. And there was chains in Milwaukee that were doing $2 billion a year in revenue. And I was able then to go to the owners of these chains and say, look, your digital marketing sucks. It's terrible. I said it fancier, but
right.
Like there's a real need here. We're local here. We can be on site with your team. We can get this done. This is what it costs. And they were willing to make that deal. Now your pitch is going to be through email. It's going to depend on what your topic is. So if you're a digital marketer, you'd be pitching the chief marketing officer. If you're doing soft skills, you're going to be pitching the director of human resources. If you have no clue who to pitch at a company, pitch the director of operations. If it's a small enough company, so like less than $50 million a year in revenue, you're just going to pitch the owner directly. Just going to go to them directly, because at that point, they're not so big that owner is going to be completely busy. So
if you have a topic like sales, would that still work for a hyper local company, and that's that strategy, if your topic typically is done at larger corporations like diversity or sales or those types of topics?
Absolutely. Sales, digital marketing. If you teach anything like in regards to growth strategies, like teaching companies how to grow, operational efficiency, team building, all that, I would label that and brand that as digital transformation. Digital transformation is a super buzz topic right now that just covers everything under the umbrella of helping a company grow.
Okay.
So if you teach that, when you're pitching, they instantly understand the value. Digital marketing, they get it. Sales, they get it. Digital transformation, they get it because they think sales in their mind. If you're pitching leadership development, stuff like that, that's going to be a little bit of a tougher sell, right?
Yeah.
Because they know they need it, but at the end of the day, they're thinking, how's this going to add dollars and cents?
Right. And I would imagine the smaller the company you're pitching, the more that dollar value has to be. That has to be the main driving force. Because I know for small businesses that I work with, because I have a firm, Mobile General Counsel, and we counsel businesses on trademarks and contracts. But the main concern of my clients is, okay, the only reason I'm getting a trademark is because I don't want someone else to use my name and steal my clients and my money.
Exactly.
They're all concerned about the dollar.
Exactly. And
so this is really, really, really good information.
And then the other thing that I would tell you that Ashley has probably heard me say is look for companies that are hiring for an employee position. So you're going on job boards, you're Indeed, you're Monsters, you type in your topic and you're going to find a smattering of companies that are trying to hire for that position. That tells you that they have a need. Pitching job board opportunities is not new. It's not revolutionary. People have been doing this since the dawn of time on the internet for internet marketing jobs. Why I've never understood why people don't do this for consulting or even for speaking. There's companies that are specifically looking for motivational speakers for speakers on topics. And that speaking is more lucrative than speaking at a conference or an industry association, because guess what? Corporations or companies are not going to be limited by budget in the same way that an organization would, like a conference would, right? So there's companies specifically that are looking for speakers, that are specifically looking for people to do it on your topic. Then your pitch is, hey, I understand you're looking for an employee for this. We can bridge the gap. We can be that training for you while you're trying to hire this employee. Because if they're hiring employees for this position, they're going to take their time, do their due diligence. And a lot of companies will bring in trainers and consultants in the meantime while they're trying to hire the right employee or to help them understand what they should be looking for when hiring this employee.
And so how successful have you found this strategy to be, either for yourself or your clients, the job board strategy specifically?
Highly successful. It's so successful, I still do this to today.
Wow.
I still send out and we've done 78 gigs at this point in 78 countries. But every single day, I still send out at least one pitch from a job board opportunity. I would say out of the 5 pitches that I send a week, 3 of them will give us the discovery call at this point, because we have a lot of social proof. And then one of them wound up being a book deal.
That is awesome. And I know that we have some time restraints today, but I heard you say all over the country and all speakers want to do at least something internationally at some point in their life. How were you able to start speaking internationally, and what would you suggest speakers do in today to start getting some international opportunities as well? Because I think that gives you pretty good social proof.
Yeah, we talked about privately held companies. The Inc. list, Inc. does have a US list and a Europe list. So you can find privately held companies in Europe and pitch those directly from that list. Also, something that I recommend is look for multinational companies, especially if you want to do corporate consulting. There are a lot of companies that have offices in several countries. We've done this with Unilever, where we've trained at one of their offices in the US, and then they send us to a lot of their other offices all over the world. So multinational companies are really good for this. Also looking at that Inc. privately held company list for companies that are in other countries and just pitching those directly. The cool thing about other countries' opportunities is that it doesn't require as much social proof as the US. The US were very paper-based, certificate-based, we want to see this person went to this college and yada, yada, yada. But in other countries, they just want to see that you can do it.
Yeah, so that is a really good tip, is look at that Europe list and start doing it that way. So this has been an amazing, amazing, amazing interview. What are you up to now, and how are you helping people now?
Yeah, what we're up to now is we're really building out our digital marketing agency. So what our main focus has been this year is retainer clients. Because speaking and consulting, we've done really well with the one-offs, and a lot of speakers that are listening to this have done well with one-offs.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be a feast or famine if you don't have other parts of your business. So
Yeah.
what we focus on is retainer clients with a lot of companies, and we've gotten some really good retainer clients where we do have a consistent $25,000 coming in every month from retainer clients. Now that might mean some done for you, which might scare people, but there's really good ways to outsource this. We white label a lot of stuff and outsource it, so we're not actually doing the work. And we're really building up the agency that way. We're really focusing on booking gigs in countries that we actually want to go to. So not just taking money. We're focused on the speaking side of things, a lot of like diversity and inclusion based content marketing, because we talk about content marketing. So we're focusing on how do you do that with the diverse angle. And that has been really well for us. And so that's what we're doing. We're building out the agency. And also we're grandparents. We're new grandparents, my wife and I.
Oh, congrats.
We're spending a lot of time with the granddaughter.
Oh, I bet. My parents are like super excited to be grandparents.
It's definitely a new ball game.
Yeah. So that is awesome. I mean, I think that just your story is so inspirational. I checked out your website. People who've worked with you have said really great things to you, about you rather, and about the level of empathy that you bring to the work that you do. So I am just really impressed with everything that you've done. I think it's phenomenal. And I really, really, really appreciate your time. What would be the final piece of advice you would give to someone who's just getting started? Maybe most of the people that we work with haven't made their first $50,000 in speaking. So they're still trying to get over that hurdle. Of course, their goal is to make more, but they haven't hit that first $50,000 in speaking. So what would you say to that person who feels like they're sending out pitches, but they aren't getting the response that they want?
If you're sending out pitches, one, make sure you're using email tracking. That's something simple that a lot of people don't do. There's a free software called Streak. It's part of Gmail. It's completely free. It works great. It even has a pipeline feature so that you can keep track of when you sent a pitch, when you need to follow up, because sometimes you just need to follow up a few times. And as long as you're adding value in that follow-up, it's not just simply, hey, I sent this pitch, what's going on? It's, hey, have you thought about this in regards to leadership development? As long as you keep sending good content, you can follow up 100 times. And for me, there's been deals where I've had to follow up probably for like a couple months and then got their response and then got the deal. So one, make sure you're using tracking. Two, subject lines. Like a lot of people's pitches don't get open because their subject lines are terrible. So use shorter subject lines. I always like to put the name of the company or the opportunity in the subject line. So let's say I was pitching Ashley. What's the name of your company, Ashley?
Mobile General Counsel.
Mobile General Counsel. So if I was pitching Ashley, the subject line would be Mobile General Counsel's content. Then Ashley's going to look at that email and be like, what's wrong with our content?
Right.
And click on it and open it. So I always like to put the name of the place that I'm pitching and then my topic. And that usually gets the email opened. And then it's the opportunities that you're pitching, right? So make sure you're very targeted and not pitching the little dinky stuff when there's all these multi-level marketing network marketing events that are good to pitch. There's some great industry associations that are good to pitch. And then there's just some straight up companies that if you don't want to do corporate training, you can go in as a motivational speaker, as a speaker in a company. There's a lot of companies that pay speakers and have great budgets. So I would say look into some companies, start local, get some experience, get some video, and then start building out from there. I'd say look at companies, and that's how you can start to get to some of those higher fees.
Perfect. And where can we find you if we want to connect with you, check out some of your books and check out some of your resources?
Yeah, you could head to kconstable.com. That's KCONSTABLE. That's my personal website. You could go to rgicai.com. That's our agency website. Both of those places, there's a lot of, like on my personal site, there's free guides on booking, paid speaking, corporate consulting, large publications. There's like 4 free guides on there that will teach you how to do all that.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Well, thank you so, so very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I cannot wait for everyone to hear the dynamite value that you gave in this interview. Much, much, much appreciated.
Thank you for having me. And I hope everybody that's listening to this is going to go take some action.
Definitely. Remember that, guys. Do not punk out. Do one thing today that you learned in this interview to start moving your career forward. And we'll see you guys next time with Speak Your Way to Cash. All right. Wasn't that interview amazing? If you're anything like me, you have pages full of notes. But here's the thing. Before you head out, I want you to go to facebook.com and join the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group. That is where I am. That's where a ton of other speakers are, a ton of other people who listen to the show. We all congregate there and chat. And it's 100% free. Now, if you're ready to take your speaking career to the next level, I have 2 ways for you to do that. One, you can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay and pick up the live replay. That training is 7 modules, chock full of information. It's crazy. Go over there, read all about it. Or if you want a more personal experience, you already know that you want to be a speaker. You're ready to fully commit and you want someone to walk you through it and save you tons of time Googling and doing it on your own, then book a VIP day with me. You can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com, scroll down until you see the VIP day section and get more information on that there. All right. Thank you guys again for watching. Please do not forget to leave us a review. That is how we keep this train rolling and get some of the best speakers in the world to get on this show. So please, please, please leave a review. Shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram, and Facebook in the Speak Your Way to Cash group, Instagram at the Ashley Nicole Show. And I'd be more than happy to chat with you and say hi. All right, y'all have an awesome, awesome day.